Feeling sleepy? Vinal?
Somewhat.
I never have coffee, but today I had coffee just to keep awake. Since years I never had it today.
Yeah.
I want to be awake.
Yeah, actually yesterday Vinal and I were discussing that this time the online sessions are little extended. It's 7 hours a day.
But without
using...
that, the inquiry, the topic is such, lot of discussion, examples need to be unfolded.
Shanta,
in inquiry.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please.
In inquiry, after a deep inquiry, certain conclusions will be made. One will come to certain conclusions.
See, that's the point of discussion, that how we are perceiving those conclusions, whatever is being made. You know, that's a very much pertinent question that one needs to ask oneself. That when I look at any conclusion per se, how do I look at it? So the conclusion, if it is affecting the sensation, that P2 domain, the conclusion that is being decided or proposed, if it is affecting the sensational domain, that if it is not being fulfilled, I'm feeling good or bad, or if it is fulfilled, then I'm excited, or I start feeling depressed. If those things are sensed, then it is affecting my energy. You know, otherwise
conclusions
in life,
as such are okay.
Yeah, momentary conclusions, those are called necessarily momentary conclusions, and which are anyway in life, which are going to happen. There's no denial to that. But if it is becoming a part of my sensation, if I'm carrying that in my sensation, then it is a depleting route, depleting channel that I'm creating for myself, and which will get evolved into a lot of health issues, as yesterday we discussed, starting from toxemia to different stages of disease. You know,
so ultimately, only the depth of inquiry will help, will avoid this P3 to P2. Only the inquiry
so let's try to explore, like what we are necessarily discussing here, that reinstating inquiry, like the inquiry eventually. So far what we understood and explored, that inquiry is an innate knack. Inquiry is an innate knack which we are already structured with. Like, I need not to learn inquiry, it is already there. I just need to unblock.
So we can understand, Kalyan, that all the education we are giving to the children and which we received, it was blocking that innate inquiry process.
Largely. Yes. There is no denial to that.
So much education of information is not required. They may not become person, may not become professional, you know, in a particular sense.
Yes.
But all that information is a load.
Yes. So this education, what we call, what is happening around is just loads of information, nothing but just loads of information. And learning is not about the loads of information, but the capability to process the information. It doesn't matter how much you know, but how do you process the information that you receive? That actually makes you educated that way. You know, so that's a part of inquiry only. How efficiently we inquire the things. That only makes you educated. Yes,
so
Renuka,
to encourage others around us, especially children, to inquire would be just by being an example to them. If we inquire ourselves.
This is again a question, ma'am, that whether we can encourage someone or not. If we are perennially inquirer, and so if we are perennially inquirer, what does it mean? That I will be inquiring whatever the situation it may be, whatever the individual I am interacting with it may be. So including children. So when you interact as an inquirer with children, as a primary caregiver, then as a natural response, they will start replicating your behavioral pattern. All possibilities, initially at least. There is a possibility. There's no assurance, obviously, because you never know what is influencing the most a child. Never know. Yeah, Renuka, you unmuted. You want to say something?
No, that was by mistake.
Okay. So I was asking Shanta if she is able to comprehend and finding it meaningful, the conversation and the investment of time that we are making.
Yeah, I'm able to comprehend
Okay.
and relate to myself.
Yes. And what about coffee?
No, I've stopped drinking coffee.
Stop
After
taking. No.
starting.
So this afternoon to remain awake, didn't you have?
Yeah.
Did you have?
No. I'm woke. I'm
Dr.
awake.
Kaur had it alone. Perhaps Renuka also, na? Renuka or chai? Renuka makes beautiful tea.
Not yet, but I've got an orange now. Nahin.
Got a reminder?
Orange.
Orange. Okay, orange. To remain awake.
No,
Great.
not really. Now I'm awake, fully awake.
Okay. Great. So, yes, suppression of inquiry.
Sorry, I wanted to ask another thing which I'm not sure I've understood.
And you were yawning.
Me?
I saw it.
I yawn quite often.
Okay.
Especially in the sessions, I don't know what happens.
Lot of what was that? I think Rashi took that topic, na, yawning. Lot of
Yes.
oxygen is needed, cooling down the mind.
I justified that to myself now that I've understood that. A lot of oxygen is needed by the body.
Yes. Anyway, so
So,
go with your.
Sorry, I was saying that the fragmentation of natural movement, the last slide said, what does that exactly mean?
Yes, fragmentation means what? Breaking down, right? Breaking down, a part is considered as the whole, is the meaning of fragmentation. So when we are actually with an intentionally sketched agenda, that time the natural movement get fragmented and we intentionally drift that towards the agenda, which is prefixed. That's the cases of most of the scientific researchers. We try to establish the hypothesis, which is a prefix thing. So in an ideal scientific research, it will be very much agendaless. It doesn't matter whether the hypothesis is established or not. But in most of the cases of sponsored research, the hypothesis is targeted as a prefixed agenda. We know it, all this drama that happens around. So that is an example of the fragmentation. So our research necessarily is an exploration equivalent to inquiry, which is agendaless, naturally, wherever it is reaching, that is the revelation to be recorded. But in case of agenda-based exploration, the natural movement is drifted, rerouted. In Google Maps, when we change the route, then it reroute. So
yes.
So that's how it is rerouted and reached somewhere else, and which we start considering as truth, which is otherwise is a fragmentation.
So the natural movement, we mean physical to physiological to psychological?
Natural movement is anything is whatever is happening unconditionally. So this programmatic aspect actually, as Shanta proposed that it could be unconditional direction of natural movement, you know. So natural movement has got an unconditional. So what is the natural movement? Natural movement is a movement which is unconditional. And what is the meaning of unconditional? That there is no intentional direction being proposed to that movement. There is no intentional direction being proposed to that movement. Wherever it is leading to, it is leading to that place or touching down that place, those points. Are you able to comprehend what is the meaning of
Yes.
natural movement? Yes.
Yes. So fragmentation of natural movement is fragmentation and over focus or under focus on certain parts of the natural movement. Is that what you mean?
Yes. And so that doesn't remain any more natural movement. When the natural movement is fragmented, it is a conditional movement. Right? Yes. So the fragmentation of natural movement is no more a natural movement.
Yes.
It's a conditional
when
movement.
Fragmentation happens, then
Yes. It's a conditional movement. When fragmentation happens, it is a conditional movement.
Yes. Fine.
So we were starting the suppression of inquiry. Now, if the inquiry is an innate knack, then why at all we experience the suppression? That's a very pertinent question, isn't it? That why at all then it gets suppressed? So here we need to understand.
And why it is suppressed more in certain people and less in certain people.
Yes. Let's
like
Krishnamurti,
J. Krishnamurti, he was totally in inquiring mind right from the beginning.
We don't know, ma'am.
I mean,
we have just heard his words. What exactly he is doing inside, that we cannot depict.
But whatever is expressed is a portion of what is happening inside.
That's a tentative proposal.
Yeah.
Tentativeness we can propose, but we don't know exactly whether he was inquiring or not.
So we can't say why it happens more or less in certain people.
Yeah, we can do again a tentative analysis of that. That's what we are trying to do. And that happens for human being a lot. Shift in hedonism. So hedonism is the pleasure-seeking behavior of organism. Hedonism, the meaning of hedonism is the pleasure-seeking behavior of organism. Now, this is a very beautiful understanding about the conservation of energy. So what is the meaning of pleasure-seeking? The meaning of pleasure-seeking means one is structured to seek pleasure. Now, why at all an organism seeks pleasure? In nature, we see the conservation is a common knack. In every phenomena, the conservation is a primary thing that is being obtained. Now, the pleasure seeking and conservation of energy has got a close relationship. What is that? That if the organism seeks pleasure, then that organism will conserve energy. And how do we experience that? If we look at ourselves as an organism, whenever we seek pleasure and obtain pleasure, there is a poisousness that we experience. And it's a common example that we used to give in workshops, that you are hungry and you are offered with a plate full of mangoes. And you pick up the first mango, it's highly pleasurable. You pick up the second mango, it's also pleasurable. Third mango, somewhat pleasurable. Fourth mango, somewhat pleasurable. Fifth mango becomes a bit painful. Fifth mango becomes a bit painful. Sixth is absolutely painful. I'm not able to eat the sixth mango. Now, what happens to the mango? Mangoes are same. The components, the ingredients of the all mango in the plate were same. Now, this pleasure and pain phenomena is absolutely being controlled internally, chemically within me. And it has some direction. The pleasure makes the individual organism poised, sensing of fulfillment. Now, painful sensation brings a sense of rejection. And if the rejection happens, then the individual organism is again back to poise. The irritation is taken away. The pain sensation is an indication to reject. The pleasure sensation is an indication to accept. And the balance is happening within to conserve the energy. And it's very much experientially observed. Now, this knack of hedonistic behavior, what we have just explained, is a physical hedonism. All the organisms are structured to behave hedonistically, physically. Now, for human being, because of the neurological evolution, there is a shift in the hedonism from physical to psychological. From physical to psychological. Now, what does it mean? It means the replication of pleasure externally through the intentional strategies. I repeat, replication of pleasure externally through the intentional strategies. So because of the neurological capability, the human organism started replicating the pleasure through the external measurements. And how can that happen? When we are chemically controlled internally, how can we regulate pleasure from outside? That can happen only through the stimulation of pleasure. That can happen only through stimulation of pleasure. Stimulation of pleasure means creating externally some measures to bring the sense of pleasure, even if naturally it is not occurring. As we have just had that example of mango, where we have observed that mango is not regulating the pleasure and pain. It is the chemical inside which is regulating the pleasure and pain. The mango is same, the first mango and the sixth mango, but the first one was pleasurable and the sixth one was painful. So that means it's very much internally regulated, self-regulated. So when we talk about the physical hedonism, it is a self-regulated experience of the organism. But when we talk about psychological hedonism, there is an intentional initiative to replicate that pleasure externally. And how can we make it? Only by stimulating that sense of pleasure with the external measurements. That is what is the tasty food made in the kitchen or in the restaurant or in the factories. Where the taste is targeted, here the mango tree did not have any objective to lure my taste buds. It's a natural mapping. Through natural response, my tongue got mapped with the mango and the pleasure happened. The pleasure was not targeted. So it's a phenomenal confusion that mankind has undergone in shifting the hedonistic behavior from physical to psychological. So stimulation of pleasure is a fallout of psychological hedonism.
So no species cooks the food except
Yes.
the human species.
Yes, that's a food is one small.
No other species.
Yes, no species build this kind of house also. Blocking the natural circulation of radiation and air. No other species blocks this. So this intentional capability started. Yeah, Shilpi, you want to say something?
No, sorry, I forgot to mute.
Okay, I thought I saw you unmute. So no other species. So food is one definitely a prominent area, but otherwise other areas also will explore in a while how this P3 element, the psychological aspect. So this psychological aspect, when start affecting the sensation, then only these kind of stimulations and suppressions happen. Now, while talking about the stimulation of pleasure, we must touch upon the suppression of pain. See, these two things are simultaneous. These two things are simultaneous. We have the cycle of pleasure and pain. Actually, we have this way. So if suppose this is called pleasure and this is called pain, the tuft and crest. So this crests are called pleasure and tuft are called pain. Now this has got a stipulated duration. If the pleasure duration, if we consider this is the pleasure duration, then the pain duration, so this is suppose the pleasure duration. This duration is the pleasure duration. Now the pain duration is this duration. So pain and pleasure keeps on changing in a cycle. And everywhere, if we acknowledge the pleasure and acknowledge the pain, we conserve energy. But what happens when the elongation of pleasure duration happens? So stimulation is stretching the pleasure duration little more. Stretching the pleasure duration little more. So if it is stretched, then it will be overlapping the pain interval. So if suppose after pleasure pain was to come, but we are stretching that duration of pleasure, then it is overlapping the experience of pain, how subtle it may be. Are you able to comprehend, Shanta?
I am unable to comprehend.
Right.
How that pleasure period can be stretched.
Yes. So here in this case, suppose the 6th mango, I was not able to consume that example. Now, suppose that 6th mango is changed a bit and made a lot of, with some masala and spices, made far more attractive, convincing me that it can be consumed.
Okay.
And I end up consuming it. But it was a painful thing otherwise. Now, with some modification, it was made pleasurable, which is actually painful. So that's how the elongation of the duration of pleasure is happening. And parallelly, there is a pain sensation which is being suppressed. Physically, physiologically, that 6th mango was painful for me.
Yeah.
But because of the stimulated taste, I ended up consuming it. suppressing the pain that was to cause.
Yeah.
So it's an overlapping of stimulation and suppression. You see here, the stimulation and the suppression both happens actually parallel. Whenever there is a stimulation, there is a suppression going on underneath. And when we directly target to suppress a pain, for example, any body parts pain, headache, yesterday we were discussing. So whenever we suppress that, that has got a direct connection to having a pleasure, because when we try to get rid of a pain instantly, that time I am seeking a pleasure out of it.
Yes.
And which is a stimulated pleasure. Whenever instantly there is a stoppage of pain I achieve by suppressing the pain, I consider that as a pleasure.
Yeah.
Which is stimulated through this suppression of pain. Are you able to understand this terminology,
Yeah.
or is it confusing?
Yes, I got that.
Right.
I'm able to understand now.
I had a doubt here.
Yes, please.
There are certain things where instead of elongation of pleasure, there is a sudden spike in pleasure. In fact, it's much lesser in duration than the natural pleasure.
Oh, in that case, actually, the after effect of that spike is also considered. The spike that you are talking about, that comes along with some after effect. You are in that memory of that spike for a longer period. It might be giving you a physiological spike for a moment, but you leave that memory of that spike for a longer period. It's ultimately elongation of the duration of the pleasure. That spike is happening physiologically for a few seconds, but you are enjoying that in your mind, replicating that spike.
Say, for example, if I consume alcohol and it's giving me any substance which is giving me instant kick, and then there is a hangover which I don't it's giving me pain. Then where is the hangover or the elongation?
Yes. Here, actually, the consideration of that instant stimulated, whatever the duration it may be, the consideration of that as a valid, we put a stamp to it, we approve it, that this pleasure is a great pleasure. That approval is a formation of the loop of P3, P2 in an ongoing basis. Do you see that? That I'm approving, I'm actually justifying in different languages to myself that yes, this should be there, this pleasure.
So I'm experimenting and seeing whether it is so, and it is not like when I'm actually experiencing it. Like even if someone had claimed that this is the pleasure, to seek, I, out of curiosity, said, let me try it out and see for myself. But would that trying it out itself have that acceptance that yes, what the other person is claiming is?
No, there actually we need to question about my own exploration. Despite those proposals of great experience, what is my exploration about it? If I am just outright going to experiment it, that amounts to belief. Believing that those proposals by that individual and just trying it out. It's definitely not inquiry, but a belief. If I don't do my own exploration about that substance, that what is the root of that substance, whether it qualifies to become a consumable or not, for the organism, whether I have done that exploration or not, that becomes a question. That why am I succumbing to this proposal? What is the valid exploration that I have made myself about the root of that substance? Do I understand the consumability factor of any substance for an organism? Have I explored that or not? So all these questions, arrays of questions can be, it's just impromptu coming up, but you understand what I'm trying to say, that what is your onus to explore? Yes.
So you are saying that, sorry, but
Mhm. Please go on.
No,
so
please
you are saying that most of the time when we hear exploration, we most of the time in anything we say, okay, let's take it or let's do it and then see. But
Yes.
you're saying that when it is to do with, I do not know if that is what you mean, when it is to do with consumables, it is, I've wondered this about medicine as well.
Yes. Yes.
That,
So,
yes, yeah, that, that the chemical intervention is happening. While I may be thinking I'm exploring, I am allowing myself to go through the changes which happen because of that stimulus, which I am exposing myself to. So what you're saying is that the exploration needs to happen at an understanding level, first of all, whether that thing is worth, or I mean, or it is not worth, but it is, what are the various aspects of that before actually letting ourselves be subjected to it.
yes. So whether my exploration is under some condition or not. If just because somebody has proposed, I started exploring and experimenting, that becomes a conditional exploration, and which qualifies to be a belief. In this particular case, what Binal brought in, we have this exploration of the basic premise. What is a consumable substance or food for an organism? It must have a natural taste to be accepted by that organism without any modification. That's a basic premise of something to qualify as food. Now, if the modification is happening on the food, how the modification is happening and what kind of modification is it? So all these layers we can explore independently. Then if at a very particular moment we sense that we must experiment it, then it is happening, then it's fine. We are not denying any experimentation or exploration of that sort. Yes, Dr. Rock Power, you're saying something.
What you said is very pertinent and proper, but for particular person who is unable to think so much beforehand and then goes for the experience, and after the experience, like Binal said, that felt the after effects and didn't like it as it was claimed by somebody else, and the similar thing was felt. But there may be another person who really likes it and gets addicted to it and wants to continue lifelong, or maybe, it's a way of his life only, becomes part of his life. So the experience in this case has decided the further course of action in his life regarding alcohol or whatever choices. Yes. Beforehand, he is not able to think so clearly about the implications and explorations. Mentally, he is unable to understand, and only by experience, maybe once or multiple times, and then he comes to the conclusion. One person concludes not to have it again because didn't like it, or as they had heard it, it's very good, and it's nice, but nothing like that was felt, and the person drops it. And another person liked the experience and continues it. So both the choices can happen.
Yes.
after experiencing it.
Yes. 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 So here, in an inquiring journey, that may get initiated at any point in time, while experiencing it, even while liking it or disliking it. In all the scenarios, it is made a few seconds are left. So let's start at that point. It's very meaningful point that you brought in, and we need to explore it. That might require a little longer
If the
discussion.
person is addicted, how would he inquire
Yes,
to
yes,
go
yes. Let's
beyond
explore that.
anything?
Let's explore that. Yes.